Welcome everyone, I'm Spiro, thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to be fact-checking the fact-checkers regarding many online reports that Bill Gates wants to implant people with microchips through vaccinations. Now in this report I'm going to be focused on two fact-checking articles that were published which claim to be the arbiters of truth during these very confusing times. But before we get into the details, I'm sure you all want to know, are the fact-checkers right? I mean, that's what you're here for, right? That's what we all want to know. So basically, is the claim that Bill Gates wants to inject you with a vaccine that contains a microchip to be able to track who has and who has not been vaccinated true? Well, truth is the answer is not all that simple. But if you want a simple answer, you're probably not going to like it because the answer is yes, the fact checkers are correct technically. Bill Gates does not want to inject you with a vaccine that contains a microchip per se. But before you leave, and before you go thumbs down this video and say that I'm some shill and everything, there's a very big but here, a huge but. In fact, bigger than J-Lo and Beyonce put together. I'm talking about a very, very big but here. There is a question that we all should be asking, a question that I sure would like to see these so-called fact checkers try to debunk. Is Bill Gates working with ID2020, Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, Accenture, Microsoft, the United Nations, and many, many others to create a new digital identity which includes the use of biometrics, blockchain, nanotechnology, artificial intelligence that will not only serve as a digital certificate of vaccination, but will also include all of your medical records, all of your financials, every form of identification, including your passports, your driver's licenses, your online accounts, virtually every aspect of your life linked to you both on and offline? And the answer is yes. Yes, they are, and they have been for a long time. Now, to me, this is much more serious even than a microchip being implanted under your skin to track vaccinations. Now, I urge the fact checkers to prove me wrong. They cannot. Because all of this information is sourced back to their own websites, back to their own documents and conferences, which I have watched hours, countless hours of. All of this information is widely available for all to see. Now, there is a whole lot more to the story than meets the eye, much more to the story than the fact checkers care to share with you, and I'm going to break it down for you right here. Now, the first story is from the New Humanitarian, and it's titled, How a Tech NGO Got Sucked into a COVID-19 Conspiracy Theory, Joining the Quantum Dots on a Public Health Conspiracy Theory. The article starts off, staff at a U.S.-based nonprofit, and they're referring to ID2020, has received death threats linked to erroneous claims about its work on digital ID in a case propelled by the tide of misinformation over coronavirus and false accusations against Bill Gates. Now, folks, don't make death threats, okay? There are many other ways to beat them. Just don't do it. They're getting the FBI involved. Don't get caught up in that, okay? It's bad news. The article then references this Reuters article titled, False Claim, Bill Gates Planning to Use Microchip Implants to Fight Coronavirus. So how did this all start? Now, I'm sure by now all of you out there have seen Bill Gates making the rounds on his media campaign promoting mass vaccination, something that many people may find concerning in and of itself, largely due to the fact that Gates states multiple times using verbiage such as, you don't have a choice, and the world cannot go back to normal until there is a vaccine and the entire global population has largely been vaccinated. Now, this admittedly does sound like a compulsory vaccine mandate is possibly in the works here, something that neither the fact-checking articles care to address. Now, people start to get nervous when they hear that this kind of language being used, especially in the middle of a global health emergency, which was declared by the World Health Organization, which again, I'll remind those out there that Bill Gates is now the largest funder of the WHO after Trump pulled U.S. funding. Now, again, this information was not included in the fact-checking articles, but I guess it's irrelevant, so let's move on. Now, public concern was then elevated even more when a Reddit Ask Me Anything, Bill Gates stated that he believes there should be a digital certificate to determine who has and who has not been vaccinated. Now, this was included by the fact checkers in both articles, and they agree to that this is accurate, basically. But what they left out was that this idea has also been echoed by Dr. Tony Fauci, who is on the White House Coronavirus Task Force and who also sits on the Leadership Council for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation's Decade of Vaccines Initiative. No conflicts of interest there, right? Now, so far we have mass vaccinations and digital vaccine certificates covered, and both sides appear to agree on this to be true so far. But from here on out is where the differences come into play. Now, many of the so-called conspiracy theorists refer to this MIT report. As a disclaimer, I have also referenced this study in previous reports of mine, and it is admittedly funded by the Gates Foundation. Now, it clearly states that they developed a new technology. This is MIT in partnership with Bill Gates and others for storing people's medical records, including vaccination history, below the skin's surface that will be delivered by a vaccine and be able to be read by a smartphone. Now, this is 100% real and verifiable and true. Both sides admit to this and agree on this. It's the so-called conspiracy theorists and these so-called fact checkers. They both agree. So where is the dispute? Well, it may only lay in semantics, actually. The conspiracy theorists refer to this as a microchip, and the fact checkers, who got an on-the-record quote from Kevin McHugh, one of the lead authors of the quantum dot die research paper from MIT, stated that, quote, "The quantum dot die technology is not a microchip or human implantable capsule, and to my knowledge, there is no plans to use this for coronavirus," end quote. While it is admitted this does get injected under your skin and does serve as a digital record of vaccination, something that Bill Gates says we need and Dr. Tony Fauci admits that they are talking about, it is not technically considered to be a microchip, although the end result is the same. So in this instance, it appears that the so-called fact checkers are right based on what some would consider to be the equivalent of a technicality. So where does ID 2020 fit into all this? Well, the New Humanitarian article starts off the ID 2020 section by going after Alex Jones, again claiming that this crazy conspiracy theorist, which they remind you in an attempt to discredit has been deplatformed from Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, claims that ID 2020 is implanting microchips into homeless people in Austin, Texas. Now, on its surface, that sounds crazy, right? Well, again, this appears to be another play on words. As the author of this article, Ben Parker, attempts to correct AJ, Alex Jones, by saying Jones refers to an article that appears to be misrepresenting the word biometric. Now, there is no dispute that ID 2020 does in fact have an operation taking place in Austin, Texas. They had a big press release about this. They partnered with Gavi. I mean, this was a big deal for them. And this program that they have in Austin, Texas, plans to integrate digital ID with homeless people in Austin, Texas, using biometrics. Now, we see no evidence of microchips. That's where these fact checkers are able to launch their fact-checking campaigns to discredit those dastardly conspiracy theorists who voice their concerns about this type of program. And some would argue rightfully so. Now, on a side note, I have privately contacted both the author of this article, Ben Parker, and Dakota Gruner, the executive director of ID 2020, and invited them here to be my guest to be clear, to clear up any misconceptions regarding previous reports or any information that they want to contest in this report right here. Let's all get on the same page. I welcome the conversation. I welcome the debate. Let's just clear things up. I'm ready. Anytime you are, just get back to me and we'll just lay it all out there. Now, the author of this article does appear to have connections with ID 2020, as they do retweet each other and follow each other on social media. And that's not necessarily like a smoking gun or criminal or anything like that, although it should be taken into consideration considering that Parker is defending ID 2020 from the dreaded conspiracy theorists in this fact-checking article. But when you dig a little bit deeper, and you don't have to dig very far, you see that Ben Parker, who wrote this article for the New Humanitarian, is also followed by the World Health Organization on social media, and that the New Humanitarian, which Parker is the senior editor for, is also funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Now, at this point, one must question the fact-checkers' motives and ability to remain neutral while claiming to fact-check and debunk other theories at this point. That would be the equivalent of a news organization that was funded by Monsanto writing a fact-checking article claiming to debunk the idea that glyphosate has been known to cause cancer. I mean, there is a blatant conflict of interest here, and they do disclose their connections, but still, one last section that I'd like to highlight from this Gates-funded New Humanitarian fact-checking article is this paragraph here. Some of the alt-right commentary focuses on a UN plan that may refer to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. which include a target to provide legal identity to all, including birth registration, by 2030. It makes no mention of digital or biometric technology. To me, this seems laughable, and I would assume, given the fact that the author, Ben Parker, who has quoted the head of ID2020 in this very article, not to mention they follow each other on social media and, promote each other's information, is blatantly trying to dismiss the fact that ID2020 is partnered with the United Nations and that they are currently working to achieve SDG 16.9, which is the UN Sustainable Development Goal 16.9, to provide legal identity for all, including birth registration, by the year 2030. You can see right here on ID 2020's website, they have partnered with the United Nations, and they are constantly talking about creating a good digital identity. But Parker states right here, it makes no mention of digital or biometric. Then what do you think they're going to be doing with with all this information? They're going to keep it all in filing cabinets, billions of people's records in filing cabinets. You think that the DMV was bad before? It'd be like, now serving number 3,674,968,001 at window number 7. Come on, give me a break, right? Now, the truth is, people have a right to question what is taking place. And while it may not necessarily be a conventional microchip that they want to implant in your skin, they still want to implant you through a vaccine to track people. Now, why else would they be working on this? In fact, as we can see right here, this article titled, U.S. Firm Combines Nanotechnology Blockchain for COVID-19 Immunity Passports. I'm going to briefly read from this article. U.S.-based quantum dot producer Quantum Materials Corp. announced its blockchain-based QDX Health ID for transparency in disease testing and immunization for infectious diseases. The goal is to ensure the authenticity of health data and support individuals to rejoin the workforce quickly. Quantum dots are nanoparticles made up of semiconductor materials that emit different colors when illuminated by light. This color depends on their size and the way they were manufactured. QCM has delivered a track and trace solution using quantum dots and blockchain to verify the origin of products and counterfeiting. Now, this is where it gets interesting. With the health data backed by blockchain, governments and health agencies can formulate new plans and safety measures to contain the spread of COVID-19 and other diseases. Additionally, individual users can assess their immunization passports using a mobile application. The app features color-coded indicators, green, yellow, and red. If the app shows the green indicator, the individual has clearance to interact in social and work environments. The indicator can be shared and authenticated by others using a QR code. Quote, "The world must have a system that eliminates the fears and anxiety of not knowing who is able to return to work," end quote, said Les Paul, the CEO of QMVT, the unit responsible for sales and marketing of QMC's innovation. Now, the article goes on to state, the solution is hosted on Microsoft's Azure cloud and can integrate with existing EMR systems. It is based on the Hyperledger Sawtooth Enterprise blockchain, and for smart contracts, it's using the digital asset modeling language. Yesterday, Ledger Insights reported the COVID Credentials Initiative, which uses a digital identity to develop immunity passports. Members of the initiative include ID2020, Uport, Dutch research organization TNO, Microsoft Consensus Health, and consultants Luxoft, and many others. So while the fact checkers claim that they do not want to insert a microchip into you, they clearly want to use biometrics and even nanotechnology semiconductor materials, which to me sounds an awful lot like microchips, but they do not classify them as such. Now, there is literally a ton of information online backing this up, lots of information. Like, for example, this article here titled, ID2020 and Partners Launch Program to Provide Digital ID with Vaccines. Reading from the article, the ID2020 Alliance has launched a new digital identity program at its annual summit in New York in collaboration with the government of Bangladesh, Vaccine Alliance Gavi, and new partners in government, academia, and humanitarian relief. The program to leverage immunizations as an opportunity to establish digital identity was unveiled by ID2020 in partnership with Bangladesh government's Access Information Program, the Directorate General of Health Services, and Gavi, according to the announcement. Gavi Vaccine Alliance was founded by Bill Gates with $750 million in seed money and is currently working with the United Nations to vaccinate as many people globally as possible. Now, here's a quick look at the COVID Credentials Initiative, which has partnered with over 60 global organizations to implement COVID-19 immunity passports. You still think that this is a conspiracy theory and that we should just go ahead and trust the Gates-funded fact checkers and not look into it ourselves? Now, this new digital identity will include everything about you, including your credit score, and it's much bigger than that. Just looking at Accenture, which is a major player in this new digital system of control, you can see this white paper linked from their website titled Harnessing the Digitalization of Finance for the Sustainable Development Goals. The United Nations Secretary General's Task Force on Digital Financing of the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, it clearly states that the central banks have planned to go cashless. It clearly states that there is a much larger plan to move everything and everyone to digital. And from what I've seen, this coronavirus crisis has been conveniently accelerating this time frame because they are admittedly behind schedule. And this all links back to the United Nations, all of it. Another example, a common theme we hear from central banks, from the United Nations, and from ID2020, among many others, is that there are over 1 billion people on this planet who are underbanked or unbanked, or do not have a legitimate form of identification. While under the UN's SDGs, which are the Sustainable Development Goals, they plan to integrate that significant portion of the population into the system by providing them with a digital ID. And of course, it is justified by the claims that ID is a human right and that they will, they want to be able to help those people. But in reality, this is a huge untapped market of people out there that they want to be able to trace and track and monitor and control and regulate and tax and vaccinate. Okay. Now, we are witnessing the global governance roll out right now, here in front of us. We are also witnessing the end of an era, the end of a paradigm, and the transition into a new digital system of control, the new digital financial system of control, which will be the cherry on top of the international surveillance state, which everyone is on board with at this point, all the major players. The United Nations is leading the way, the central banks, the governments, they're all on board. The mega corporations are playing major roles in this. This system is going to be basically run on 5G, AI, and the blockchain. And it's here right now. This is the implementation phase. Now, they're going to tell you that it's not happening, or if they admit that it is happening, they're going to tell you it's for your own good. But they'll never give you a choice. And if you do choose to speak out or question, if you dare to question, you'll be considered the enemy. Now, I personally see that this crisis has been used to accelerate this global governance agenda right now we're seeing take place. And they have been working on this for decades at this point. And a common theme that I've observed is not only do these organizations want to push their vaccines on as many people as possible, they want to silence those who may question it, despite the admitted health concerns. So, to answer your question from the beginning of this video, does Bill Gates want to implant microchips in all of us? No. I'm afraid it's much worse than that.